of countries, have a couple of beers, and discuss a stadium somewhere in the world and their experiences there. I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.
And we are excited to be with you here tonight. Before we get started, please make sure to subscribe to the Stadium Journey YouTube channel, like this video if you like it, and even if you don't like it, please just pretend, and leave a comment. The official Stadium Journey review of today's venue, done by yours truly, can be found at stadiumjourney.com. Down there. No, the link can be found in the comments below. Down there, look down there, really. So let's get rolling before I get too far off track. Dave, what are you drinking today?
So today, I had to take my son to his baseball training in Guelph at Peak Performance Athletics, and just literally 2 doors down is a little spot, little neighborhood brewery, because like it seems like everybody has a neighborhood brewery. Aren't you going to open your own neighborhood brewery, Man Cave Brewery?
Oh, that's a good name for it. Holy crap! Pam, I'll quit my job. Now I just got to learn how to make beer.
Anyway, this one has got a bicycle motif. It's called Fixed Gear Brewery. So I popped in there today and I got a few, and I'm trying this one today, which is called Fixie. It's a Citra IPA, pretty good, kind of Hogarten-like citrus flavor, lighter and not too IPA-ish, because like I said, I'm not a huge IPA fan. So I gave this one a try, literally like around the corner. So yeah, that's what we got today. What do you got today?
Okay, so one of the last road trips I took was up to Amherst, Mass, and UMass football. And so for you, the viewers, I feel it now is part of my duty to find a nice brewery and check out what they got. So I actually stumbled into a place called Building 8 Brewery, and I picked up myself the Lager, which is a German-style Pilsner beer, which is actually one of my favorite personal styles of beer. So I'm enjoying it very much. So that's what I have. If you were visiting today's destination, you might be drinking an Orange Line IPA from Turtle Swamp Brewing, because today we're talking about Alumni Stadium, home of the Boston College Eagles football team. Before we dive into our discussion, let's take a look at the stadium vitals. So, Dave, just to keep you straight here, because I know there are a lot of facilities out there with the alumni name tag. So we are in Chestnut Hill, Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. Actually, Boston College, interestingly enough, is not in Boston. It's in the neighboring town of Newton, and Chestnut Hill is a neighborhood that straddles the Newton-Boston line. So, Alumni Stadium.
I find Boston thoroughly confusing in this way.
So do the locals, trust me.
Okay, I don't feel so bad now.
So you and I actually visited Chestnut Hill together one time.
Yeah, absolutely. My one trip to see Boston College, and you were there, so I had the benefit of the tour guide. So,
well, you had the benefit of the perks of my credential, which the biggest perk, as far as I'm concerned, when I do a review for Stadium Journey, is the parking situation. Because Chestnut Hill, it's a very, how shall I put this, very well-to-do town. The town of Newton is among the richest towns in the country. So you've got $1 million homes all over the place. And being an older town, there's not a whole lot of extra room. You can't smack a parking garage in the middle of a place like Chestnut Hill. You can't plop big parking lots down. So the parking is done in satellite lots. But there are 2 parking garages on the Boston College campus. So if you're lucky enough to have a credential for the game, they'll give you a parking pass along with it. So I was lucky enough to have a credential and a parking pass. So we got to, instead of enduring shuttle buses in satellite lots, we got to park a short walk from the stadium and tootle on over.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that about how Chestnut Hill is kind of situated. I think that was probably my first impression, is that it seemed like a very urban campus, not overly sprawling like some of these big schools that you see in the South or in the college towns. And linked to that, I was really surprised how strong the tailgating was. Now, it did seem like they kind of just wedged tailgating in wherever they could find it. But I was really surprised at how strong it was. Driving around that kind of campus with you, and having driven in Boston a little bit, to me, it's one of the most confusing cities to drive in anywhere. It's one of the worst places to park anywhere in most sections of Boston. Now, that being said, I think the public transit is quite strong. If you can find a spot to stay that's along the line, which in our case we did for the most part. So yeah, it seemed to be an intimidating spot to get in and around. If I wasn't with an expert.
Yeah, in a lot of my reviews of Boston facilities, I do say that it's best to have a local guide with you. And I guess living in New England for the most part of my 55 years qualifies me as a local. One of the cool things about where Boston College is situated, and you mentioned the public transit, and you can take the T, the public transportation, the subway system in Boston is called the T, short for MBTA, Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority. There is a stop, probably a 10-minute walk from the stadium. So that's simple. And Boston College is on the Boston Marathon route. So when I drove you in, we actually didn't go in through Boston. We went around Boston and in from the side. And we drove in along the Boston Marathon route. So you got that going for you too. So yeah, the campus is not a sprawling campus by any means. It's known for it's got some great architecture, some old Gothic style buildings. And we got to experience a little bit of that while we visited. But the fact that they built this about 45,000 seat stadium in the middle of this tiny campus is actually a pretty impressive thing. And it blends in nicely.
Yep, for sure. And it's funny how things change when you get older. When I was a kid and kind of first getting a sense of college football actually existing, Boston College was one of the great teams. And it took a while to see that, wait a second, this isn't normal, right? Like I was pretty young when
that was the 80s, right?
When Doug Flutie hit the big pass and
yep.
It seemed like that was the beginning of every college football show and the lead in Doug Flutie bouncing around there. And of course up here, Doug Flutie is a legend. I think he's probably just secondarily a legend. Like obviously in Boston, he's huge because he's from the area, went to Boston College, had the big moment, won the Heisman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then he kind of sputtered in his sort of first stint in the NFL. It wasn't great for him. Situations that weren't great for him. And then he came up and just rewrote the record books in Canada wherever he went. Like he won the most outstanding player a number of times. So Doug Flutie was pretty huge. And I always thought that Boston College was this great football team, and then to find out that they're pretty up and down. And I mean, one of the questions that you would ask about Boston College was a move to the ACC a good move, to join Florida State and to come with Miami and some of these big programs. And I'm not so sure.
Yeah, but I think in terms of what was the alternative, it probably was their best move, because staying in the Big East and what happened, the Big East actually splintered now. It splintered back into the Big East Basketball Conference, and the football teams had to move into what became the American Athletic Conference, which really became such, I don't know what I want to call it, unworkable for like UConn, that UConn actually left and has rejoined the Big East now.
Yeah.
So I think the move into the ACC overall for the athletic program was probably a good move. But yes, they have absolutely struggled for the most part in the ACC. Their last few seasons have been decent, not great, but decent. They are back on the way up, but you're absolutely right. when you were growing up in the 80s, those were their salad days. They have not even come close to replicating those heights since.
Yeah. And you figure that they should have a lock on the recruiting in New England, right? Like, it's Boston College, it's UConn, it's UMass. UMass is a baby. They haven't been around that long. So
yeah,
and I don't even know how long UConn has been FBS.
There are 3 FBS teams in New England. There's Boston College, there's UMass and UConn. Like you said, UMass and UConn have both been at the top level only for about 15 or 20 years. And this year, we're recording this in October of 2021. They just had an epic game. I don't know if you're aware, but is it USA Today or ESPN or somebody ranks all the teams from 1 to 130? And a couple of weeks ago, UMass was at 130, UConn was at 129.
Yeah,
and they played each other. UMass won, so they've flipped.
that's unbelievable.
So yeah, you would think Boston College would have a lock on the recruiting, but that just goes to show you football is just not a big sport around here. There's not even enough talent to support one top level FBS team around in this area.
It would be interesting to chart the grassroots with the proliferation of Brady and the Patriots, and has that trickled down into the grassroots that will at some point, start to feed Boston College, UConn, UMass. I'm not sure. It would be interesting to see. I mean, for us in Canada, we see that the Raptors and Vince Carter have had a huge impact on basketball in Canada and the growth of basketball in Canada.
If you look back to this area in the 70s and what the Bruins did, Bobby Orr and that bunch did to hockey in this area, absolutely exploded hockey. I guess if you're going to see a similar influence from football, the kids who were, the Patriots have been good since their first Super Bowl is 01. So those kids born in 01 are now just 20 years old. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we're there yet. In a few years, maybe you'll see the youth football exploding up here. But you know what? As someone who lives up here, I haven't seen it. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
Football is just a different animal, I think.
And it's tougher too. Like, the weather is not as conducive for football in the Northeast as it is in the hotbeds in Florida and Texas and Louisiana and Alabama, California, all those huge recruiting spots. But I will say this, going into Alumni Stadium, I was really pleasantly surprised by the amount of tailgating. I thought they did a great job. They have all the traditions that you would expect. The band does their thing.
They're walking. Yep. The entrance. I forget. The Eagles walk, they call it. Yes.
Yeah. I feel it's just shrunk from a lot of other places. Like, it's just not as big. It's not as big as Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State or anything. The band is great. It's just not, a 300-piece band. The experience was great. We saw a great game. They played Virginia Tech and they won. I guess it's funny. One of the highlights I found of Alumni Stadium was its proximity to the hockey and basketball stadium, and its access to that, right? So you could just, and I just hopped in to the other side.
They're connected. Yes.
A future Obstructed view is going to be on Boston College hockey, because at that moment I was like, oh, I have to see some Boston College hockey here, because this is amazing. And they do have the big Hall of Fame that's in there. And that's one thing I really like about the college facilities, is so many cases you just walk in, they're just open, right? Like, they do have that feel, that student feel, like this is part of our campus. The number of times I've been to a football stadium in the South when there's no game on, you just walk in and there's kids running around, and the, like in Florida, the team store is just right in the stadium. You just walk right in, you can see everything. And
absolutely.
And you really got that feeling in Boston College, and you walk in there and you really see their bread and butter too, like all of the banners that are there for hockey and a few for basketball. I actually have a question for you. There's a number of honored players with Boston College, and some big names, Art Donovan, Luke Kuechly, Matt Ryan, of course, Doug Flutie. So then there's Doug Flutie and Mike Ruth, who have their numbers retired.
The only two, there's a lot of, like you said, there's about a dozen honored numbers. Only 2 are retired.
So why those 2? I mean, Doug Flutie.
Flutie's pretty obvious. He won the Heisman. And I think in his senior year, what did they end up finishing? Like 6th in the country, I think.
They were up there.
Yeah.
They were up there, yeah.
The other retired number is Mike Ruth. He is really an underrated part of those 80s teams. And he actually won the Outland Trophy in his senior year. So I think that's why his numbers retired. He didn't have much of an NFL career. He had played for a few years, played on the Patriots actually for a little bit. But he, in his college days, he won the Outland Trophy, which is the Heisman for interior linemen.
Offensive lineman?
Defense. He was defensive. I think it was for offense or defense, the Outland.
Oh,
I
okay.
think you can go either side.
Okay.
So I would guess, that's why his number is retired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love your point about the connectivity between the Conti Forum, which is the hockey and basketball arena, which is actually connected. If you have a luxury box, one side overlooks the arena, the other side overlooks the stadium. You can look either way. And if you're on the concourse of the football stadium, not much of a concourse. It's not open. Alumni Stadium was built back in the 60s and 70s, that era. So that was before the days of the open concourse. It's underneath the grandstands, but you can sneak up into, not really sneak, you can just walk right up into Conti Forum, take a look there. And that's where they have their Eagles Hall of Fame. They have all kinds of displays. You can look in the arena and see all the retired numbers. So it's really, if you're there for a football game, get there a little early and take a walk around Conti Forum too. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the highlights for me. A couple, again, we were saying like some of the traditions. They have the Golden Eagle, which is kind of their thing that like you see in lots of places. Some places have a rock. I think at Clemson you touch the rock, and I think in Notre Dame you hit the door frame. But they have a Golden Eagle there that the players all walk by, and that's like kind of the lucky head that gets rubbed or whatever. So that's kind of neat. The victory bell, is it a victory bell or a touchdown bell, or they have a bell down there on the field?
Yeah, so I think it's a touchdown bell. It could be a victory bell. I don't know. I've never really paid much attention to that. From a fan's perspective, if you're going to Alumni Stadium, you have to get a picture. I think it's mandatory to get a picture with the Doug Flutie statue outside the stadium. It's him in his classic pose from the Hail Mary there.
Yeah.
He's reaching way back.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And whether you like the idea of the bronze statue or not, it provides that meeting place. That central, okay, meet me at Doug Flutie. I want to go in to the gate at Doug Flutie or whatever. And so many places have that. And it's neat. I think it's neat that they they have that guy, and he's a local guy too. I mean, I don't think it gets much better than that. Still
is a local guy, still lives in the area.
Yeah, I mean, up here, I think we're a little bit distraught that he has had such a solid broadcasting career doing college football, because we'd love to have him up here doing CFL or to have a larger presence in the CFL still, but you go where the money goes, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So. Well, that's what brought him down to Herschel Walker's rally a few days ago. So he's his popularity has dipped a little bit in New England right now as he's aligned himself with Herschel Walker and Donald Trump in that group. But you know what? I say he was teammates with Herschel Walker. They go way back.
So Herschel Walker, Donald Trump, right? Like he was swiped by the New Jersey Generals when Trump owned them. That was his big thing. And again, trying to understand Donald Trump, but the previous year they had signed Brian Sipe away from the Cleveland Browns, and then went and drafted the Heisman Trophy winner, which was, I think he was like the third in a row that ended up going to the USFL.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of get why he's there. I don't know, but
I mean,
yeah,
that's neither here nor there. I just, it
I
was
guess
interesting. It was in the news.
I guess one thing that also surprised me about Alumni Stadium is it definitely an FBS stadium. It just seems like it's not a Power Five stadium. To me, it's more akin to what you might see in some of those smaller conferences in the MAC. It feels a little bit bigger than some of the ones in the MAC. It kind of reminds me of like an Akron, very almost rigid, very kind of upright kind of stadium, very square when you get in there, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, that it doesn't jump out at you at some of these massive places. It doesn't have like the history like a Cincinnati does. So it does feel a little mismatched in a Power Five setting, but you know, like I said, we saw Virginia Tech, had a blast. The fans around me were wonderful. You know, I can't say I've had too many bad experiences at college football. I find that maybe I'm just lucky. I find that the fans around are always super welcoming and more than willing to tell you their story or what it was like when they went, you know, class of whatever. So long as you're not wearing the wrong hat, I guess. So you know, very very different kind of fan base than what you would get at like an NFL game or something like that.
No doubt. And in this part of the country where, like you said earlier, there's not a lot of options. It's not like you can drive 2 hours in any direction and be at a big time football game. Boston College is what we got. It gives us our taste in this corner of the country. The stadium is very much a product of its times, which we mentioned. All the things you said are right. It's very square or rectangular, very boxy. You cannot see the field from the concourses. Concessions are nothing to really brag about. It's just your basic ballpark black dreck, as our colleague Andrew Kulik would say. I love that term.
Yeah.
Certain parts on the upper deck, you can see downtown Boston skyline, which is a pretty cool view. There's a nice area for walkers and joggers in the neighborhood. Chestnut Hill is a fantastic area. So if you walk around the neighborhood, you're not going to feel nervous or anything. Yeah, you couldn't put a giant college facility on the Chestnut Hill campus. There's just no room for it. In fact, when they just built the new baseball softball complex, they had to put it down the road. They couldn't put it on campus. So that just goes to show you the space limitations they're dealing with. They have expanded Alumni Stadium since they first built it. It was originally a single deck, and then they expanded it up. The only way to go is up. You can't go out.
It's the only way to go.
So I can't see it getting a whole lot bigger than it is now. It's probably maxed out, and they don't need bigger. If they had a 60,000 seat stadium, it would be half empty half the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you almost think that if it ever got to that point, that maybe, like if it really, really got to that point, that maybe they do something and they got to go off campus, or you know, maybe they try and get into Gillette or something like that.
Yeah, they have played some of their bigger games at Gillette, and before that, Foxborough.
Right.
The Miracle in Miami game. No, that was it. That was in Miami. But when Miami came up, when they were the powerhouses, they would always play at Foxborough. They would never play it on campus. But I think they've moved recently. They play all their big games, and they have Notre Dame come every other year. So they have big games there. Now,
that being said, you know, being in a campus situation like that, you know, maybe you don't have the opportunity for 60,000 or 70,000 or whatever, but you're a stone's throw from plenty of places to eat and drink and to enjoy the town a whole lot more than, you know, being in the middle of nowhere or whatever, right? Like, I mean, I love Notre Dame. I love the campus. There's not a ton of places to go. Like you're really hoofing it just because the campus is so huge and the parking lots are huge, but especially when you got the guide who knows all the ins and outs and how to get to parking and we went to Delhi, I think.
We went to a Man versus Food spot, of course, you know, with all the talk we do about Man versus Food.
Right.
There's one right next to that. One of the places Adam Richmond visited when he was in Boston. I think it was the show's first season, way back when, was right next to the Boston College campus. It's in a neighborhood called Cleveland Circle, which we could have walked from the stadium there. I mean, it would have been a good half-hour walk, 20-minute walk, but we drove. Took 5 minutes, not even. And yeah, Eagles Deli, where they're famous for their hamburger challenges, where the challenges just keep getting bigger. They add another patty, another half pound of fries or whatever.
Right.
It just challenges larger and larger. And you and your son ended up getting like pastrami sandwiches or something.
Yeah, yeah. I think we had Rubens, and you were like, "Why are you
What
getting
the hell?
This is a burger place." I'm like, "Dude, it says deli right on the sign." They were really good though. So.
Yeah. And if you want something a little fancier, you hop on the T. You're in downtown Boston in 15 minutes.
And that's the thing. Like Boston is such a great tourist town. It's not the greatest maybe to maneuver around with your car if you don't know what you're doing, but there's just a ton of things to see, a ton of things to do. You know, even if you're not a college football fan, you could match that with so many other things in a weekend. Even if you
sports
don't want
or non-sports, yes.
Yeah, even if you don't want to spend, like 4 mortgage payments on a ticket to see the Patriots and parking or whatever, like if you go late enough, there's hockey, and Boston is such it's funny, it's a pro town, but it's a college town, right? Like you've got Harvard and you got Northeastern, you got BU and you got BC, and the number of times that you've talked about going to the Beanpot, like there's just a ton of things to do. And we went to Boston College, but I know we did, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know we did plenty of other things as well when we went. Yeah, we went in August. Oh, that was the Army weekend. We won't talk about the Army weekend.
Talking about the Army weekend.
But yeah, lots to do, lots to see, good times.
I may be biased, but I've got to agree with you. Boston is one of the best cities to visit in the country, bar none. I'm not just saying that because I'm a local. I've been all over the country and part of your country, and Boston takes a backseat to nobody. So Alumni Stadium may not be the flashiest or the fanciest place you're going to come across, but hey, if you're looking for a good stadium journey, you're going to find it at Boston College. So that's our look at Alumni Stadium, and we hope to see you on the road real soon. Cheers.
Cheers.